who are around to explain reality to us. Next. Roosh is currently in Canada spreading his hatred of women while lots of women are protesting and have petitioned to keep Roosh from crossing the border. The petition sparked Roosh to make a plan to harm these women, target them online, and dox them. This is a typical strategy MRAs use. One MRA will post that he wants the dox a female protester, and the information gathered is then disseminated to the audience so that each man can take his violence out on her online and offline. Really, Sale? When has an actual MRA ever been reported for being violent to a woman? Name one? I cannot think of any. And please note I did say, actual MRA. Obviously I'm not talking about non-MRAs who are falsely labeled as MRAs for the purposes of feminist propaganda. Next. There's a reason why it's called the manosphere. There is no distinction among the various groups. Each group, PUA, MRA, MGTOW, all have different strategies to harm women, but they're all hateful misogynists and they close ranks whenever one is being protested. You know what, Sale is 100% right. Whenever I talk about banning male infant circumcision, because it violates the basic human right to bodily integrity, what I'm actually doing is taking part in an Illuminati plot to harm women. Hey, I was the guy who hired Bigfoot to assassinate JFK, so I should know what I'm talking about. And if modern-day feminism has taught us anything, it's that anything a man does is somehow a patriarchal misogynistic plot to harm all women everywhere. I mean, just before, when I bought the morning paper, it was actually an attempt to oppress women, or something like that. I don't exactly know how, but I'm sure it has something to do with testosterone and toxic masculinity, and maybe calling young girls bossy, or possibly air conditioning. It's really hard to tell with the patriarchy. Next. Elam has taken this opportunity of Roosh being protested to tell women that he will kill us and what they'll use to do it. Once again, let me stress that I would agree that Elam goes too far in his article, when suggesting that a punch is a proportionate response to having a drink thrown on you. But he does not say that he would kill a woman for doing so. And then there's that last part of the sentence, and what they'll use to do it. I must have missed that part of Paul's article. Also, Paul was expressing his own opinion, so why use the word they'll instead on he'll? Here Sale is trying to reinforce the notion that MRAs have a mob mentality, which is kind of funny when you think about it. This is what we call projection. And once again Sale misrepresents Paul's words by using the term women, instead of feminists, or to be even more accurate, violent ideologues. Unless of course Sale is suggesting that only women can be violent ideologues. That sounds rather misogynistic of you, Sale. Next. He uses a very sarcastic tweet he found on Twitter as his justification. And I would agree with Sale here, Paul's use of the tweet was an extremely weak argument. Next. Someone joked on Twitter that beer was flammable and that Roosh had a drink thrown on him for grabbing a woman by the waist and dragging her into a bar. Now this was the first time that I heard that Roosh grabbed the woman by the waist and dragged her into the bar. And Sale actually links to a tweet from supposedly the woman in question, who makes this claim. Link below if you wish to read the tweet. Now the footage doesn't show this, in fact it's outside the bar. But what she describes could have happened beforehand. Or the woman who threw the drink might be making excuses for her actions. Or the tweet could be fake. Who knows? I would point out that the tweet does say, grabbed my waist and brought me into an empty bar, not, dragged her into the bar, as Sale would suggest. Now they could be the same thing, I don't know, I wasn't there, and neither was Sale. I will say though, if Roosh did drag her into the bar, then he probably did deserve a beer thrown in his face. But I have to really question the story. Are we to believe that Roosh approached her on a side street, dragged her against her will into the bar? She then purchased a beer from the bar. They then both went outside again. At which point she decided to throw a beer on him. Now if she had have said, attempted to drag me into the bar, it would make sense, and possibly be true. But she specifically says, brought me into an empty bar. If she was outside, and already had a beer when Roosh grabbed her, it would make sense that she might throw it in his face. but being dragged into the bar, buying a beer, then going outside again to throw it in his face makes no sense. I think the most likely scenario is she and her friend recognized him, and felt entitled enough to throw the beer in his face, and then chase him down the street. But this whole Roosh debacle isn't the first time something like this has happened. Almost a year ago a similar thing happened with pickup artist Julien Blanc, who for the record seems like an even bigger douchebag than Roosh. Julien Blanc was doing a world tour, one of the stops was my hometown of Melbourne. Local feminists tried to stop him from entering the country, just like with Roosh. And they actually succeeded in getting him kicked out of Australia. The media also falsely associated Julien Blanc and PUAs with men's rights activists, just like with Roosh. And there was also a protest which ended in violence, and in this case it wasn't just a drink to the face. But apparently physical assault is. And here I thought both were wrong. But to sum up, I'm not a fan of Roosh. The MGTOW in me doesn't like the concept of male self-worth being based on pussy. It also doesn't like Roosh's more traditionalist outlook on life. And he is very much a traditionalist. I'm a big proponent of personal choice, and if you want to get married to a stay-at-home wife, while you go off to work day after day, fulfilling the provider role, then good luck to you. But it's not for me, nor do I think a modern-day society built on those principles is healthy for men. We are much more than just wage slaves. Nor do I think it's particularly safe, as you stand a good chance of losing everything you've worked so hard for, including your kids. So no, I don't support traditionalism. Nor does the egalitarian in me like Roosh's view of women. The egalitarian in me wants equal treatment, rights and responsibility for both men and women. And that last part, equal responsibility, is one of the main reasons I'm an anti-feminist. Because feminism in no way advocates for equal responsibility for women, just the opposite in fact. And the MRA in me resents the constant need to disassociate our movement from Roosh and other pickup artists. Admittedly, this last one isn't the fault of Roosh, but of feminists and the feminist media, who through either ignorance or deliberate deception, constantly claim Roosh is an MRA, when clearly he has stated otherwise. But it does make good propaganda, I guess. Or alternatively, the feminists making the statement has so little understanding of the men's rights movement, that they assume Roosh's bullshit is our message, when it's not. So we cannot really blame Roosh for this, but I am sick to death of having to respond to arguments against the MRM, that have nothing to do with the MRM. So yeah, I'm not a huge fan of Roosh. I tend to agree with Elam that there is something of the used car salesman about him. Although to be fair, he does occasionally hit the nail on the head when it comes to feminists. But I don't have to like or endorse his message, to respect his right to free speech. Who seriously wants to live in a world where other opinions, even unpleasant ones, aren't heard? Sorry, stupid question, I forgot about the social justice movement for a moment. But I don't want to live in that world. I want to live in a world where other opinions, even unpleasant ones, are openly heard. After all, those of us who are rational, thinking human beings, have at some point in our lives changed our minds about something we just assumed to be true. You cannot do this if you limit the type of information you are exposed to. It wasn't easy for the world to accept that the Earth was a globe, and not flat. It would have seemed counterintuitive, and against the dominant narrative at the time, but it was correct. And now that our knowledge is far greater, we take the fact that the world isn't flat for granted. So yeah, I want to live in a world with open debates, and a variety of opinions, even unpleasant ones, and most importantly, free speech. The alternative is an echo chamber. You know, before I heard of the social justice movement, I always thought a safe space was where banks keep their money. And let's put this in proper perspective. Roosh's lectures only had around 30 guys attending. 30 guys who I am sure would already have his books, and be regular readers of his internet sites. Trying to block Roosh from entering Canada has done nothing but give him free publicity. I'm sure he's had a great deal more activity on his websites, and would consider the whole trip a success. And lastly we come to the topic of violence in activism. It's true, Roosh only had some drinks thrown in his face, but the entitlement which enables a person to do that, isn't that far off the entitlement that allows one person to think they have the right to hit another, or push them off a ledge. All sides in this debate should be condemning anyone who uses their fists, instead of their words. Yet this type of behavior is either cheered on, or ignored in feminist circles, as it's seen as justified, as it's done against the proverbial bad man. And the aggressor then predictably cries victim. Anyway folks, I've run out of time, so until next time, always remember, don't drink the poison Kool-Aid.
A lot of fuckboys think feminists have daddy issues, but the only issue I have is that you aren't 6 feet under the ground chopped up into tiny little pieces. I will take your fucking entrails and wrap them around a tree so that the birds can feast on your fucking dead body.
Just in case Paul Elam was right, can we please make sure the cute little bunny doesn't have access to any flammable liquids? Just in case.
Do, 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 man.